been a little while since I've recorded a video, and I don't own an M4 device, but I do thoroughly enjoy this gentleman's videos. So all I'm going to do is partially critique the video, because I'll let you know already, he does a really, really good job with almost everything that I've seen. But I think at this point I have opinions about the M4 line of products. And since I don't own them or own one, I need to voice my opinion through somebody else's. So hopefully what I'll be able to do is talk about the video and then also talk about the product itself. I'll pause and play and do the thing that I normally do, and then we'll move on. So if you aren't subscribed to my channel, please do so. But if you aren't subscribed to his channel, please do that as well. But without further ado, let's go ahead and get started.
You know that sense of security when you have a MacBook with you, that in case anything comes up, you don't have to wait till you get back, and if nothing comes up, you've at least packed some entertainment on standby. This feeling of enablement is now stronger than ever with today's M4 line of MacBook Pros.
So, with what he just said, and I was trying to convey this to my brother's girlfriend and my brother yesterday, and it's easy for such statements to fall on deaf ears, but when Apple transitioned to Apple Silicon, the game changed. And for all the hate that I give the iPhone, which I will continue to do, I have no problem doing that. When it comes to the actual Mac, every day I'm impressed. For instance, right now, making this video, I am using, and in fact, let me turn this little guy on, because normally, there you go. I am using an M1 Pro MacBook Pro. The device, at this point, I think is 3 years old. We're in 2024, so I think it came out 2021, so a little over 3 years old. And I have a hard time, I guess, wanting to upgrade, because I'm like, well, this thing does everything that I want it to do, and then some. So the idea of having to spend, $2,500 or whatever on a new machine that will, do the same stuff and technically a little bit better, I'm just like, no, this thing still does it. So in my opinion, Apple, yes, they definitely made the M1 series of their products really good. And in their opinion, they might say they made them too good. Because it is hard to recommend an upgrade. And I will say, as I previously mentioned, yes, this machine right here is an M1 Pro 16-inch MacBook Pro. It has 32 gigabytes of RAM and a 512 gigabyte SSD. And, if I had a terabyte, I think I'd enjoy that a little bit more, but the 32 gigs of RAM is really what I'm satisfied with, and as a result of that, I've had next to zero issues. So performance-wise, battery life-wise, screen size, screen quality, speakers, trackpad, keyboard, Touch ID, Wi-Fi, the 3 USB-C Thunderbolt ports, which I don't have any Thunderbolt devices, so I don't necessarily reap those benefits, but it's an all-around great product. And this product is the one that's now 3 years old. So when it comes to the new ones, I'm just like, if you have an Intel-based Mac, like my brother's girlfriend does, I'm like, just anything you're going to get that's not Intel, you're going to see substantial improvements. But for those of us who already have Apple Silicon devices, I'm just like, well, do you really need to upgrade? And with the one caveat, which is why I ended up getting an M2 MacBook Air. Since I had an M1 MacBook Air, the form factor change for the MacBook Air going from M1 to M2 is why I upgraded. Other than that, I probably would have stayed with an M1 MacBook Air. So we're going to go through what he has to say. And again, I'm not bragging on anything that he says, because I thoroughly enjoy his videos, but at this point I have to just critique the M4 line of products, and since I don't own them, I'm doing it through him. So let's get started.
We'll be speaking about the 14-inch with M4 Pro in today's video. Not the top of the line, but for what I would describe as a mid-range configuration, we have progressed to the point where this M4 Pro can, in many ways, hold its own against the Max chips of previous generations. I've done...
And I'll definitely say, yes, that's good. And I guess that's what should happen at some point, that yes, the Pro chip should be comparable to the Max chip of previous generations. Also, just the base, so M4 chip is probably comparable to some of the older Pro chips as well, because whether it's clock speeds go up or transistor sizes, I guess, get smaller, or whatever actually happens, yes, years later, the regular should be as good as the Pro or Max of previous generations. The Ultras, I think some of the other YouTubers have talked about, oh, well, this regular Pro or Max version is as good as the Ultra of a previous generation. Cool. But even with the older ones, they're just so good already that yes, it is hard to recommend buying a new M series chip if you already have one. But yeah, let's get back to it.
Real-world comparisons across a few use cases, but as an appetizer, some synthetic benchmarks. I ran both Cinebench and Geekbench 6 comparing M4 Pro against a M2 Max as well as an M3 Max. The M4 Pro is in the lead when it comes to single-core performance, but quite surprisingly, it also came out on top for multi-core, beating out even the M3 Max by a small margin. When it's down to GPU benchmarks, however, that's when the Max chips still hold strong, though notably in the Cinebench test, M4 Pro still clocked in at a higher score than the M2 Max.
And I apologize that it's no longer on the screen, but I think at that point it just really comes down to number of cores. So if the Max of a previous generation has more GPU cores than the Pro of this generation, then yeah, I think you're just going to get a better performance score. So, and that just, there's more cores, so whatever. But yeah, let's get back to it.
In a world where we've got to work as hard as our MacBooks, playing back a heavy 4K timeline in Final Cut Pro was also impressively smooth. This is with render files and optimized media intentionally cleared out, playback set to higher quality, and background rendering disabled. The source media is untranscoded H.264, recorded with inter-frame compression, and it's also been color graded, so just about the most unoptimized, taxing playback conditions, and the M4 Pro's zipping through it like a champ. The results caught me a bit off guard, however, when I was comparing video export speeds against the M2 Max and M3 Max. These are results for a 3-minute 4K 30p timeline exporting to H.264. The M4 Pro took more time to finish than the two Max chips, but when I tried exporting this very same timeline into ProRes 422 though, the M4 Pro was the fastest. Even against the M3 Max, the M4 Pro was leading by a significant margin. This was completely outside of my expectations, because the Max chips actually have two ProRes encode-decode engines.
And yes, I think in 2 minutes and 25 seconds into his video, it's clear that there will not be consistent what's the word I'm looking for? Yeah, there will not be consistent improvements from M4 compared to the other ones. Oh, in this particular test or example or actual real world use case, the M4 Pro outperforms the Max chips of previous generations. But in this particular activity, then yes, the Max chips of previous generations are going to outperform the M4 Pro. I think if you were to stop watching this video right now, which my video will be 9 minutes and some change at this point, Apple Silicon, any of them, and yeah, he's not comparing this with M1 Max chips, because yeah, they probably would be a little bit slower, but if you were like, oh, I don't want to spend $2,000 more, or whatever the price is of an M2, M3, or M4 device, and you're still considering an M1 device, I would say yes. If the price difference is substantial between that older device and one of the new ones, then yeah, by all means, go for it. As I said, using right now, what I'm using is an M1 Pro MacBook Pro, and I have zero desire to upgrade to any of these products that he's talking about because this one already is just so good.
Only have one. So there's something about this new generation which puts it at a rather steep advantage when it comes to working with ProRes. It's also got a more powerful neural engine, so tasks powered by machine learning like the new magnetic mask tool do run faster on the M4 Pro, especially when compared against the older M2 Max. It is technically faster than the M3 Max, but I would call this close enough to say it's similar.
Yes, and as I just mentioned a few moments ago, that yeah, there are going to be certain tests or certain real world scenarios where the M4 outperforms the Maxes, and then vice versa. They're all good computers. Okay, that's all. They're all good computers.
I also gave some Apple Intelligence features a spin, like rewriting a 1400-word pages document. This is being processed locally on device, by the way, so processor capabilities do make a difference. I even turned Wi-Fi off while running this test to be absolutely sure. And again, M4 Pro came out fastest, marginally beating out M3 Max, but a notable speed boost over the M2 Max.
And I don't think I've mentioned it yet thus far, but even though the Pro moniker is on the physical device itself, so it's a MacBook Pro, and then yes, whether the chip has Pro or Max on it, whatever. If we're looking at this particular scenario, we're talking about 6 seconds. So from the fastest to the slowest, and then 2 seconds and 4 seconds. So if you are just a prosumer or just a consumer, is 6 seconds really going to make that much of a difference to you? Like, that's a question you'd have to ask yourself. Again, and I think I keep coming back to it, that I'm using an M1 Pro device, and at some point I'm going to render this video, and yes, it'll most likely be slower than the amount of time taken had I owned one of these devices that are on the screen right now. But it's already so good that I feel just like, yeah, I could spend the money to save a couple seconds, but why? The biggest thing that is, I think, super important for me, given the fact that I am using the machine right now, is the fact that even though I'm sure the fans are spinning, you can't hear them. If I attempted to do this with either an Intel Mac or just an Intel/AMD PC, the fans would be so loud that I wouldn't be able to do what I'm doing right here. So yes, the M4 Pro is going to outperform some of the older generations, but the older generations are also very, very good. So don't think you need to buy the latest version of an Apple Silicon product.
There is also one performance-related feature that's being made available for the first time on the M4 Pro chips, and that's high power mode in macOS.
And I just had to stop. I mean, when it comes to something like this, like a feature, it's Apple could have, even through software right now, they could enable high power mode through the older devices. And I'm not even going to click around on my machine to see what the options are because I doubt that it's there. But it's like, that's not something to be celebrated. That's more of a thanks that it's here, but why wasn't it available on the other Pro devices? And even if it's not a Pro device, like, oh, you have a MacBook Air, yeah, I don't think, actually, that's probably not a good idea if there's nothing, no active cooling. But still, it's, for all the other Pro devices, why isn't that available? Yeah, so why do we have to wait for the M4 to get high power mode on the Pro MacBook, on the Pro chip? Don't know, but hey, it is what it is.
M1 and M2, high power mode was exclusive to the 16-inch Max configurations. For M3, it's available on both the 14 and 16-inch M3 Max, but for the first time with M4, it's available on both M4 Max and M4 Pro, 14 and 16-inch. The mode allows fans to run at faster speeds, so we can think of it as prioritizing performance over comfort.
And even though I think I've gotten tired of Max Tech and their videos, yes, I know there are apps you can install to allow the fans to run higher so that way you can theoretically get better performance. Like, I know that exists, but in terms of just building it into the operating system, why do we need a Pro device 4 generations in to finally get, the M4 Pro to have it? I don't know. I know if I had a Windows machine right here, you have the different battery modes or whatever. Why does Apple spoon feed us these little things in increments all the time? And sometimes it does get a little annoying, but hey, I guess I'm happy that it's here now, maybe. I don't know.
All this performance is, of course, great for getting work done, but it's also equally great for not getting work done. I actually completed my first full playthrough of Stray on this 14-inch M4 Pro. I know gaming on Mac is still in the process of coming together, but the gaming experience is actually fantastic. The reason nobody's getting a Mac exclusively for gaming, at least right now, is because there aren't that many titles available yet. There's certainly progress being made. I hear Control and Cyberpunk 2077 are coming to Mac next year, but Stray, which is a game which I've been wanting to play for a while, has actually been available on Mac for about a year now. One thing about Stray is it's a fantastic game, but it's also a bit notorious for not being very well optimized for any platform other than the PlayStation 5. Even with that in mind, if I were to run it at the MacBook's native resolution of 3024 by 1964 at maximum quality settings, I still ended up with a very playable frame rate holding very steady at 30 frames per second. For the bulk of my playthrough, however, I ran it at 1920 by 1200, which gave me steady 60 FPS frame rates with the occasional spikes into the lower 100s. Switching over to a title with better optimization like Resident Evil 4, I was able to maintain a stable minimum of 60 FPS at full native screen resolution, high settings, and in fact my average frames per second was actually between 70 to 80. Although nobody really describes the MacBook Pro as a gaming laptop, the 120Hz ProMotion XDR display, coupled with the incredible speakers, seriously delivers a very pleasant gaming experience.
Hopefully at this point I cut out a lot of the stuff that you just talked about gaming, because I don't care. I don't care. But the one thing he did just mention, the excellent speakers, yes. And since I have not taken the time to download an app to actually see the refresh rate on the screen, it's like right now as I'm recording, is it operating at 120 hertz? I know it's scalable, so is it down to 60 right now? Is it beneath that? Don't know. But if he is seeing a difference, I don't know. I mean, the one thing I will say is, given the issues that we recently had with the iPhone, and I won't necessarily call them issues, it's just, people downloaded apps to apps that will allow the user to see what the current refresh rate is on the screen. And for a lot of it, it was hovering around 80 or 60. Sometimes it would peak up to 120, but the videos that I saw would not go beneath 60, which I think is a problem. It should go down to 1 if there's a static image on the screen, or something lower than 60. So is the same thing happening with the Mac? Don't know, but again, it's an all-around good machine. So the screen and the speakers are absolutely fantastic. And that holds true for even the older devices.
Being able to interact with the in-game world in stunning HDR is one thing, but also the very MacBook advantage of being able to do all this on battery power alone.
And as you just mentioned, which that is one thing I think I briefly mentioned before, is yes, being able to do this on battery power. So right now, yes, this machine is connected to a dock. The dock is charging the Mac, cool, but I know and have done all of this on battery power, and it's absolutely phenomenal. And again, with a M1 Pro. So I just have to continue to reiterate that I feel.
No difference in performance whether you're plugged in or unplugged, and when it comes to battery life on this 14-inch, 1 hour of unplugged continuous gaming consumed only about 30% of my battery. It also didn't run nearly as hot as I thought it might when it came to gaming especially. It's certainly a little warm, but still very comfortable. I even managed to play a few good hours of Stray in bed, under cat supervision of course. But again, this is all happening on the mid-range M4 Pro chip. If, for the past few years, your workload has always necessitated a max variant of the M series chips, Now the Pro chips have gotten so good, you might not need to shell out the money for your Macs anymore. But one of the biggest physical advantages of the current M4 generation is the option to get a nano texture display with your MacBook Pro.
Now, he's going to spend some more time talking about the nano texture display, and if I remember to do so, or if you like it, I will look to see when the nano texture display was first available. I want to say on the either Pro Display XDR, or the other one. There's two displays. One's really expensive, and one's relatively affordable, but still more pricey or pricier than a lot of people want to spend. So yeah, I agree that a nano texture display, to make it so that it's not so that glares and things aren't as problematic, is nice. Wasn't available on the M1, M2, or M3. I'm confident that they had already created the tech, whatever the tech is that involves this, because it's not just a cover on the screen. It's infused with the display somehow. Don't know. Google it. You'll see exactly what I'm referring to. Is that something that could have come around 3 years ago? Probably. Is it nice that it's available now? Yes. Could you, if you own an older one, put something on the screen to help with glare and stuff? Also probably yes. I will say that when it comes to putting stuff either on the screen for something like this or covering the webcam, Apple warns against that, because they're like, hey, you might damage the display. And yeah, I agree, because the way that they've milled everything to be as precise as possible, any additional fractions of millimeters could cause damage when you are closing the display. So yeah, it's nice, and we'll see in a few moments the difference between the nano textured one and the non-nano textured one. Cool. But again, is that something that could have happened a couple years ago on a Pro device, or even if you want a MacBook Air with one of these? Yeah, so I guess thanks that it's here, but at the same time, could it have been here a little while ago? And, and I'm saying this mainly because when it comes to other machines that I've owned, just having like a matte display, I guess some might say, oh, that affects colors or whatever. Like, I don't know. I mean, I'd have to sit there and really study to see, oh, is this really different than the one that has a glossy display? Don't know. But yeah, glad that it's here, and let's continue.
I would option nano texture in a heartbeat, especially on a MacBook Pro, because when you think of it, this is exactly the Mac which you'll end up using outside of a controlled environment. This is the Mac you would deploy in the field, and this is the display you'll have to look at under challenging lighting. If you're not entirely sure that nano texture is for you, I'll break down how it affects reflections in 3 main ways. First, it completely eliminates low-intensity reflections, particularly in bright rooms where you might see the reflection of a wall or some furniture behind you. That completely disappears with nanotexture. For reflections of really bright sources like a light fixture, nanotexture reduces quite greatly the intensity of that reflection. But the third thing it does is diffuse it, essentially blurring out the reflection, which makes a huge difference when dealing with distracting or busy reflections. Think reflections of trees outside, window blinds, window grills, or if you're using your MacBook Pro in a studio, a softbox with a honeycomb grid on it. Some of the reflection is still there, but it no longer gets mixed up with your displayed content. Now, I'm not making this up. This is something which actually happened. I was trying to catch an episode of Silo, specifically Season 2, Episode 5, on a non-nanotexture display, and I ended up seeing a lot of myself. So I reached for my MacBook Pro with nanotexture and continued the episode from there. That was one of my proudest moments for owning a nanotexture display.
So it's evident that it makes a big difference. I have not checked to see what the price is. Probably $100. Some nice round figure if you want the nanotexture versus the non-nanotextured one. But yeah, makes a big difference. Is that a reason to upgrade? No. But if you were coming from an Intel machine and you were like, oh, maybe I would like this, you probably would. So consider that.
Combine that with the elevated 1000 nit SDR brightness on these new MacBook Pros, and you have one of the best laptops for daylight visibility. If you're working from a bright cafe, out in the sun, or in a bright studio, you're going to be glad that you optioned nanotexture. On the MacBook Pros, nanotexture runs all the way to the edges of the bezel with a cutout for the upgraded center stage camera. In addition to the actual center stage feature itself, this camera also enables desk view out of the box. Previously, desk view was only possible via continuity camera, which means now there's 0 additional footprints if you were to use desk view.
Now, again, this is one of those things, if I take the time to actually do the research, which I probably won't. When was desk view first announced? Which iPhone was it? Via continuity camera. I want to say it was like the 12 Pro. I don't know. But then I'd have to look to see which MacBook was available then. Was that pre Apple Silicon? And then if it was, okay. But then the fact that we have this notch, which even on this M1 variant of this MacBook Pro, was there not enough space to include, I guess, a wide angle camera, or whatever technology is currently in the M4 one that allows desk view? Was that not an option? I mean, yeah, again, I feel with Apple, it's always, hey, let's slowly spoon feed you certain things when technically the technology exists, but we're just not going to include it. So, yeah, whatever, that would be my question. Whatever technology exists right now in the M4 version of this MacBook Pro, was it available when the M1 or the M2 or the M3 came out? Probably, but they needed something to hold on to for years later. So with that being said, would that be a reason for you to upgrade? That's completely up to you. If you have an iPhone already, just keep using continuity camera. That would be what I would suggest. But yeah, I guess it's nice that you don't need the iPhone to do it anymore, I guess.
Notice that you don't have to tilt your screen down as much for desk view when using the built-in center stage camera. It is a single camera setup, which means it's cropping the view of both your face and your desk from...
And I think the one thing that I didn't mention is the terminology center stage. So yeah, when did that come out too? In addition to continuity camera and the desk view, when was center stage first announced? On which product? I feel like it was an iPad, but I could be wrong. I don't remember. But again, when it comes to the fact that there's this big notch in the screen for the M1 version of this, what could have been possible back then? And then, what did they just hold on to until now? So again, is that a reason for you to upgrade? Probably not, unless you really, really need it for some reason.
Same ultra-wide frame. This works a bit differently from the continuity camera version of desk view, which uses your iPhone's main camera for your face and the ultra-wide for your desk. To round this out, we'll touch on one more hardware improvement for the M4 MacBook Pros, although this is a bit dependent on whether you're on base M4 or one of the M4 Pros or M4 Maxes. On the M4 Pro, which I've got here, all 3 Type-C ports are now Thunderbolt 5. This is the same case with the M4 Max, and these ports are also backwards compatible with Thunderbolt 4 as well as USB 4.
So when it comes to Thunderbolt, great. As I mentioned earlier, yes, this one has 3 Thunderbolt 3 ports. I don't have any Thunderbolt devices, so I know I'm not truly benefiting from it. But if you think that you would, especially for Thunderbolt 5, which is a lot faster than Thunderbolt 3 and Thunderbolt 4, then it might be worth it. Don't know. But yeah, that's a specific use case for you. But again, Thunderbolt 3 is pretty fast. Thunderbolt 4 is pretty fast at 40 gigabits per second, or I think Thunderbolt 5, I want to say natively operates at 80 gigabits per second, but then through whatever is possible, you could reach theoretical speeds of 120 gigabits per second. If that's something that is useful to you, then maybe you should consider it.
In the case of the base M4, the ports would still be Thunderbolt 4, but they now also come with that third port on the right side of the MacBook, which wasn't there back on M3. Now, I promise that this line was not written by Apple Intelligence, But I find even the smallest incremental improvements on this generation of MacBook thoroughly enlightening.
And I guess, I have to agree with that statement right there. And I know I nag a lot, especially with Apple. But I mean, and that's what happens with technology is you have incremental improvement. So every machine isn't going to be something that's breathtaking. It's, oh man, this is, light years ahead of the previous device. I get that. So, and that's not the point of this video if you made it this far. It's just, if you already own an M series MacBook, you probably don't need to upgrade to the M4 version. As I said, since I have an M1, would it be worth going to the M4? For me, no. But based off of what you're seeing here, I hope at this point you've probably seen other YouTubers run their tests and benchmarks, theoretical and actual real-world performance, and you'll see, oh, is this something that I would benefit from? If you have a full-blown business that operates on your machine right here, seconds might make a substantial difference to you. For somebody like myself, who does all this stuff just casually, whenever, a few seconds isn't worth the thousands of dollars I'd have to spend on a new machine. Plus the fact that this machine has 32 gigs, I'd want another machine that has 32 gigs. So now we're really talking about a bunch of money. You have to make the decision personally, and I know I've said it several times already, if you have an Apple Silicon device, upgrading to the M4 version won't be as beneficial as you might think that it would be.
Years ago, when I was reviewing the 16-inch M2 Max, one question I could not get out of my head was, how in the world was Apple going to make a future better version of this? Because for me, back then, it was already a laptop which ticked all the boxes, and I even went as far as calling it the best MacBook ever. Now, finally, I have the answer to that in the flesh, and it doesn't look all that different, but it's quite a bit better.
And yeah, I agree. It's a better machine because it's faster. It's faster for various tasks. Not all tasks, but for some tasks. So yeah, definitely a good machine. 30-something minutes into this. I am not saying it's a bad computer at all. I'm just saying be wary of certain channels, not his channel, but other channels. Oh, yeah, you need to upgrade, the best MacBook ever, which even if it is, the fact that it's better than last year's Mac doesn't necessarily mean that you need to buy it. The fact that it's better than the MacBook that came out 2 years ago or 3 years ago doesn't necessarily mean that you need to buy it. So I am completely satisfied with my M1 version of the MacBook Pro. If you choose to upgrade, by all means, do so. Just recognize that you already have a good machine if you're coming from another Apple Silicon device.